I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of Monday, January 8th, 2024 to order. I ask all who have not signed in, please do so. Please turn off all cell phones and other electronic devices. Please conduct any private conversations in the hallway or outside. This meeting is equipped with the inductive loop hearing assistance system. You'll be able to hear conversations through the microphone on hearing aids with a T-switch. Emergency exits can be found to your right and to your left. Please also note that this meeting is also live streamed via YouTube with text commenting available. Now, if you please join me in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome and Happy New Year to all. I want to start off by welcoming our newest town board member, Alexis Ogra. Alexis has gone through our orientation process with both all of our town departments as well as our attorney and engineer. So, Alexis, congratulations and welcome here. Last month at the December 18th meeting, I mentioned we had 6 employees celebrating birthdays of the month of January, but I failed to name them back in January, so we want to give them their proper recognition. So on the 11th of this month, Robert Graham and Tammy Vienna will be celebrating a birthday. On the 12th, Lisa Boughton and Brittany Pender. On the 18th, Isabella Burnham, and then on the 19th, Kim Kinsella. All town departments will be closed on Monday, January 15th for Martin Luther King Day. And that's all I have for announcements. Board members, for your consideration, the December 18th town board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, payment of bills. We'll ask the town clerk to please introduce them.
Manifest number 1 in the amount of $167,706.21 has been reviewed by the Victor Town Board with the following accounts charged: General Townwide, General Outside Village, Parkland Trust Fund, Highway Townwide, the lighting districts of Fishers, Brookwood Meadows, High Point, Cobblestone, Quail Ridge, Rolling Meadows, Stone Lay, and Legacy at the Fairways, and S&S Consolidated Sewer Fund.
Thank you, Karen. So we'll start, as we always do, we try to identify those who are in the range of $5,000 or more. We'll start with payment number 1 to Cargill. This is for road salt. Number 2, Five Star Bank. This is the November and December credit card purchases. Heidelberg Materials for town projects. Payment to Integrated Systems for January hosting. And payment to Lewis General Tire for town highway truck tires. Payment to NOCO Energy, diesel fuel purchased in the month of December. Payment to New York State Comptroller's Office. These are fines and fees that we have collected locally, and this is the portion that we have to send off to the state of New York. And final payment is to RG&E for December townwide gas and electric. Total of the above-mentioned expenditures is $104,989.24. Total town expenditures minus the previous mentioned expenditures equals $62,716.97. Board members, any questions on the manifest number 1? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the payments thereof.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have no scheduled privilege of the floor this evening. For the public, I do want you to know there was some material left on that back table that might be, you might find of interest. It has to do with appraisals, land appraisals, some maps, town-owned land, some conditions of the current highway facility, things of that nature. But this time, I know Karen's going to be the stopwatch for this evening, but I just wanted to mention a few things. So, again, I will mention that I will owe an apology to the public when we passed a resolution on the 18th for the potential acquisition of the land on Brace Road. At that point, myself and other board members probably most likely should have mentioned that this was the intent to purchase this land for utilization for a town highway facility. And I know it is the entire assessed value and reevaluation process is complicated at time. Anyways, I know this property is assessed extremely low, and especially based on the fact that there was a transaction back in 2019, you would have thought it would have been higher. But what we've done, or what government has to do when it comes to purchasing property, is we have to hire a third party to do that. And so we had an appraisal company. We usually alternate between two of them. I think Midland is one and Bruckner is another. And so the appraisal came in at this piece of property, 11.9 acres at $850,000. Again, the agreed upon price is $1 million. Asking price, I think, was $1.2 million at one point. And we also, what we feel is of significant value to the town is right adjacent to this property is another 11 acres. That is, we received the, part of this would be a transfer. The current owner has a right of first refusal on this piece of property, and part of this transaction would be for that right of first refusal to then come to the town of Victor. It is important to know that there's a combined 25 contiguous acres of land that touch this piece of property and run right across Brace Road, beyond Serenity House, and beyond the entranceway to Victor Municipal Park. I think right now. I think that's, so it's interesting, I stopped by the assessor's office today and I said, I got to ask you a question. I said, in 2023, would you estimate between yourself and your deputy, how many real estate transactions you tabulated this past year? And they said it was about 250. So I said, out of 250, I said, how many were sold at the assessed value? At the assessed value or less, and they said one. So unfortunately, real estate, if you've been out in that market, especially for new land, anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000 that we have found, and certainly speaking to real estate agents as well. So I think that's about all the comments I have. I will certainly answer questions. I know board members would certainly are open to answering any questions you may have, but I would really, you should take the time, take a look at, see what's, and there might be some pertinent information on that back table that may help you. So at this time, if there's any public comment, feel free to come to the podium. And as I said, state your name for the record. And Karen will certainly be the stop clock. Start the clock after they introduce themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Jones-Richter. I reside at 125 Church Street. And I am here tonight to speak to the resolution that was passed by the town board on December 18th. One of the biggest concerns is that all the discussions were held in executive session. No information was made available to the public. Even the vote itself, there was no discussion. It was simply a vote, no information available to the public. As Jack mentioned, this is regarding the approval to purchase 1256 Brace Road for $1 million. In looking at the Ontario County information, the assessed value for 1256 Brace Road is $202,000, with the land being $80,000. The full market value, according to the Ontario County tax rolls, is $255,700. So that is the full market value that's according to the Ontario County tax rolls. There are two pieces of property. I saw some information on the back. It wasn't clear from the everything in executive session, what was being spoken of, but I did also look at the additional piece of property that was laid out, I think, in the orange here. The Ontario County information for that has a total assessment value of $87,000, and a fair, full market value of $110,000. So I know Jack mentioned potentially there was an assessment that was done. No information of that was provided to the public. So we are very concerned about a couple of things. Number one, is $1 million really a fair market value for this property that, according to the Ontario County tax rolls, is somewhere between $255,000 to $300,000? In addition, it's my understanding that the property was transferred internally, basically from the property owner to a limited liability corporation in 2020 at $360,000. Internal, question is an attempt to raise the value of the property. Don't know the facts on it, but again, that's something that raises questions to the public in terms of what's really going on with this property and with the owner of the property itself. So those are the primary concerns that we are raising. My understanding is there is a process for permissive referendum. We're in the process of gathering votes. 9 out of 10 people I've talked with have been in favor of a permissive referendum to the public. We currently have a little under 200 signatures. According to the Ontario County Registrar, basically there were 7,825 votes, and 5% of that is just under 400, so 392. So we are in the process of gathering signatures for it. I know I'm about at time, so I appreciate your time tonight. I would like to confirm the specific date that the permissive referendum petitions are due. It's a 30-day time frame. Because of the December 18th, right before the holidays, obviously, we're under a tight time pressure to gather these, but we're working on it to do that. But again, timing on it was really not fair to the public in terms of that. So I want to make sure we're clear on the date that it's due, and if I can get from the town confirming that information we got from the registrar, so we're clear on how many numbers we need as well. Thank you.
I'll ask the town clerk to send you an email with the specific responses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Randy Shea, 50 West Main Street, Victor, New York. I'm so upset about this, your decision, once again, to try to do stuff without having the public know about it. And now you apologize? When people apologize to me, I know they apologized when they do something that shows it. You're apologizing because you got caught doing something that you've done well too many times here, Jack Marin. Jack, I have what you would consider a compliment, at least it used to be. You were one of the most highly skilled politicians I've ever known in my life. Coming from me, and based on what I see in politics these days, that is the most sincere insult I could possibly give you. I'm not saying this because I haven't been paying attention. I'm saying it because I'm one of the few people that has been paying attention. Now, if you truly mean, you really mean you're apologizing, it's very simple, and I can take all my words back and maybe change my opinion of you. What you do is you do a motion to reconsider, so it resets the time frame for us to go out and get petitions. The other day, I almost fell on my butt. I slipped on the snow. It's the middle of January. I didn't even put a message out to the public about this until the 1st of January of this year. And then within a few days, I got a groundswell. I don't know if we're going to be able to get this petition done in time to push it to a referendum, but I sincerely hope that the people that are watching this, I'm very happy, by the way, that you got cameras in every place around here, because it helps a person like me not to be falsely accused of things. So Jack, what some people would call you right now, and a lot of politicians when they're on their way out, probably their last term, is a dead duck supervisor. And yes, maybe I'm a minority opinion here, but I think that opinion is going to change over the next few years. And out of sincerity and true compassion, I would recommend that you resign for personal reasons sometime soon.
Thank you. I appreciate the first compliment of 2024. Any other members of the public?
Hello, I'm Ruth Nellis, 93 East Parkway. And while I applaud your efforts to save some money by grabbing that land before somebody else, or before the price goes up, I do have a question to see if this permissive referendum applies to this situation. The permissive referendum requirements for a town are set forth in Article 7 of the Town Law, Section 94. It provides that a town board, on its own motion, may cause to be submitted for voter approval any board resolution against which a petition or permissive referendum could be filed pursuant to town law. Does this pertain to this situation?
Well, I'm not going to comment. Richard Tucker.
Could you speak just a little bit louder, please? Thank you.
Hi, Richard Tucker, attorney for the town. Thank you for the question. We'll be happy to take it into consideration, and we'll get back with the board on that. You said it was in specific reference to Town Law, Section 7 is what you had been researching?
It's Article 7, Town Law, Section 94, and there's something in parentheses with a little 9, I have macular degeneration, so reading is difficult. 90 ET SEQ.
Ruth, can we see that? Can you give us a copy of that so we can take a look at it?
Yeah,
Right, no, that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
the-
that'd be helpful, yeah. Yeah,
the indication is Section 90, et sec would mean like a continuation of the sections referred to in that law. So that's why we would want to take it back and look at this section that you're referring to and the subsequent ones in regard to the question. But we'll provide our answer to the town.
my gut is, and I'm not legal, but I'm speaking as a board member. My gut is that you can take, I think any board can take something to the public for a vote. You know what I'm saying? If we wanted to take it out for a vote, if we wanted to spend $100,000 or $10, we have the right as a board to take any transaction. If we wanted to buy something, we could take it out to a vote to the public. So I think that's what you're going to find is the answer to the question. And I think what you're looking for tonight is why didn't we, right? So maybe that's what you're looking for. And I think we've got some answers and some discussion points for you.
I have been aware of other meetings for other issues, and you have to go to executive session. But executive sessions are sort of a mystery to me because we never hear any summaries. Maybe, I have been on many boards, and I'd love to hear individual opinions rather than a blanket statement. So, because I know, having been on boards, there's always one person who has maybe a question, an opinion, an option, and that would be refreshing. So, thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Evening. My name is Joel Richter. I live at 125 Church Street, and I have to follow my wife, who so graciously spoke with you just a few minutes ago. The one question I have is, how will this $1 million expenditure be funded? Is that a tax raise over time? Is it coming out of existing funds?
That'll be a check written to them, just like when we bought the courts back in the
I'd like to really know what it's being funded, a raise and increase in taxes? Or is it coming out of operating funds? Or is it coming out of reserve funds?
reserve. Reserve fund.
Okay, so it's coming out of reserve funds. So the town has $1 million in reserve funds. Didn't the fire district just go through an issue with reserve funds?
They might certainly have, yeah.
Maybe that's a discussion for another time.
Any other members of the public here to offer comment?
Christopher Blair, 1223 Wellington Drive. I guess my question is, has there been any site plans or anything like that that you guys have discussed for this highway department?
The only plan we put together was to make sure what the highway superintendent would like to see would fit on that parcel. We actually, I think it was back in 2018, our highway superintendent and his deputy were given a town map, and they went out and they looked at, they had a circumference area. My understanding, I think they looked at 15 to 20 acres parcels, and we came up with about 7 that we did, I think it was in March of this past year, where we had an overview from our engineering firm in executive session, and we looked at some and whether or not they were still an option, and unfortunately we came down, we were trying to nail it down to at least 2 so that we could go through the negotiation. One of them was a location we really liked as well. We knew it was going to need some work, but one of the facts that we failed to, in our due diligence, was to find out that unfortunately the Dryer Road, we have the Dryer Road Park next door to that. There's a pit area, so we use that. I know our highway superintendent uses that for a lot of his materials and things like that, but we were looking at that as a location. Unfortunately, there's no sewer there. And then when we did the exercise of going through and pricing out sewer, my recollection, I think it was 1.1 to...
3 million.
Oh, okay.
That was the upper end of it.
Yeah, so
So-
that kind of, so yes, at this point, this is a land acquisition.
Yep.
The next step, if this was acquisition that goes through, would be for myself and the Director of Finance and the Highway Superintendent and his deputy. We would start our due diligence, going to other communities that's gone through this process as well. And then at some point, we'd get the town board in a van, and we would go to other locations, other communities, and look at their highway facilities. Want to build a highway facility that'll accommodate, continued growth, though that's slowing in this community, for the next 20 years, as well as certainly looking at the amount of miles that he, the highway superintendent, and his team are responsible for plowing and maintaining.
Okay. The other concern that I'd have, obviously the location, if you're putting a highway department there, would you be able to pull out onto 96 from Brace Road? That's a
Correct.
pretty bad intersection. Obviously they'd have to do something with, some kind of traffic study. Has DOT been involved with any of this, any talks or anything like that? Or are you going to go down Brace Road to 41 to head out that way?
Great question. The way that intersection is today, the highway superintendent said no way in heck. A loaded salt truck pulling out of there left, it's dangerous regardless, even in a regular passenger vehicle. So preliminary conversation with the DOT, they're absolutely willing to come out and speak to us because we would, that's a big decision, part of that.
Is that being factored into this land acquisition?
That a decision and potential change would have to be made there is part of that, yes.
All right, thank you.
And, I should say as well that the property across from Auction Direct, which has all the medical buildings there, we do have, the town received an easement back when the approvals for that was done back in the early 2000s, I'm guessing, that we actually have an easement that would connect with some of the property we already own.
Going out on Anthony Drive there?
Yeah.
That's what
Yes,
you're talking
yes.
about? Okay, all right, fair
Okay?
enough. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other members of the public? Board members, I don't know if you want to offer any comment?
I would, in fact. I I'm going to really take exception to some of the things that Randy brought to head here, because this isn't something that we pulled out of a mailbox someplace and saw something and decided we got to have it. I've been on committees as far as in the mid-'90s, looking at property for this purpose and for courts and for many town projects. We looked at many projects that would encompass 10 acres or greater. And since then, we haven't found anything that would accommodate what we have. We need a facility, and we've gone through the engineering process, and we've gone through what would accommodate what we have, and we've outgrown what we have. And portions of our facility are very old inside. They look good from the road, but they're very old. We've got pushing $6 million worth of town equipment to maintain over the course of those years, and some 40, could be as many as 50 pieces if you could bring them into one place at one time and do them all, and we've got them in multiple locations. As far as using executive session on a piece of property, there are very set rules as far as what you can and can't do in executive session. It could be personnel, it could be things that can't be brought up into the public. It's not a hiding place, and you can't make it a hiding place. It's very restrictive by law what can be and can't be discussed in a executive session. In this term, we announced when we went in it, it was executive session for a factor that may contribute to the property value that you're negotiating on. If you made it out to the public, it could affect the property value. Our intentions were strictly to buy a piece of property that would work for the town, utilize it in the best way possible for many years to come, not for the near future. We've been looking for this property for 15 years that I know of, that I've been aware of it, before I was on this board and when I was on committees to try and find these properties. We've not yet, to this point, found a piece of property for less than that we could put what we have on it. It became available, and there was some negotiation at some point in time that was far beyond what we could imagine. And then we made the purchase of the Stagnito property in conjunction with the Parks and Rec property that we already owned, and the combination of those three together with that made it far more valuable to us and to residents for that kind of money. I know the assessments are what they are, but there's not a piece of property on Route 96 with frontage there with the size that accommodates 12 acres or greater that, can, in my opinion, can be purchased for any lesser amount. For whatever reason, I mean, it's just like everybody in this room. I don't think, when you bring up what it's assessed for, I highly doubt anybody in this room would sell their house for what it was assessed for. I know I wouldn't, by a long shot. It makes a big difference when it comes to the actual sale and what it can be bought for and who was on it, and when you're bidding against somebody. Every single action this board takes in this process, whether it be the purchase of this property or any other property, has only one thing in mind and one thing only, and that's for what a continued long-term solution would be to big problems that we have. And we've gone beyond it with this facility that we have. We've outgrown it with recycling, town barns, Parks and Rec, and all of the equipment that we have and all of the roads that we've maintained. We are substandard in our facility, and we're substandard compared to every other town around us. And we looked at Farmington, and we looked at other places that had to build those same facilities. We looked at Ontario County when they went to theirs. I've been on those committees and those tours. We're not out here to try and build a palace for some people just because they think they need a new building. It's a big need. And the last thing I'd say is Rich has done, and as far as funding, Rich has done a phenomenal job at targeting funds for this purchase, whether it was this or any other purchase, what we're going to do and why it's in the reserve fund. And it's planning ahead so that we have a head start on it. This isn't a flash in the pan. This is something that came up that is in our minds the best interest of everybody in town. It's needed, and we would do it for no other reason than that. So that's all I've got to say about it. That it's not like it's a pull it from the mailbox and say we want to do this. It makes the most sense out of everything we can do, and there is not. And I've looked at every piece of property. I've gone in that van and looked at every one. There's not a piece of property of that size that would accommodate what we want to do for any less money unless we bought a piece of property that's less and put more money into it to make it what we need, but we do have a big need for this project. And now that we've got the court settled, which was a big problem, we have two things on the board. We've talked about it, you've all talked about it for years, is Parks and Rec and a town facility. And this was something we greatly needed to move forward on, and we did it for that reason and no other reason. That's my opinion, and that's all I have to say about that.
I'll,
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to jump in next. So,
I failed to ask Susie, was there anyone on the public that?
Point of information, I don't know what it was that I said that you took exception to.
Sir, if I may?
Yes.
I have someone that, publicly on the YouTube asked the question, then the public has spoken.
That's
and
good.
then the
I just
town
was
board-
hoping that he would tell me what he took exception to, because I didn't hear anything in what he said, that I said.
I took exception to everything you said, pointing at the supervisor and the facts and the things you said about this supervisor in this meeting. Had nothing to do with the topic on the table. It was just your personal vendetta, and I took exception to it. And that's my opinion, and I gave you my opinion.
Well, that's a good opinion. It isn't based in truth.
This is, thank you very much. Councilman Condon.
what do you got? Yeah.
Actually, this is from a resident, wants to know if the town is allowed to state who currently owns the property in question. I'm not going to divulge that.
Okay. I think it's, my comments center around a couple of things. And I think it's the process of, the questions that come up are good questions. I think what Councilman Guinan talked about, the fact that as soon as you start talking about acquiring any piece of property, obviously, if you're the landowner and you know that the town's interested, tick, 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 right? It's just like same thing when you're trying to sell your house or your farm or whatever else. So I think that's one of the reasons why those decisions are discussed in executive session. And I think the other thing that is difficult is that outside of Dave Dankin, who's here at every meeting, thank you, Dave, for being here and being a representative of the town constituents, sometimes it's a lonely place. I mean, people are busy, they have lives, and, and so, I made a crack in our organizational meeting today about the fact that we have to have the Messenger as our official paper, and how many people get a paper anymore? How many people, where do you get your news? Is it on the website? Is it, we try to do our best to put it out there and put the minutes out there. And when something is a 5-0 vote, is it, we're not just getting our marching orders and following with the supervisor. We are all of independent minds, and we all have discussions on items, and we come to the decision. And looking at this parcel, when I look at the assessed valuations of the parcels, I was looking at my tax bill myself, and I think everybody in here is quite aware that the town tax is the lowest tax we pay, right? I mean, there's no question. It's the absolute low between county, school tax is the big nut. I get that. But it's the lowest tax that we pay. In 2016, when I first came on the board, one of my primary goals was for us to stop borrowing money for the trucks. We were a little bit upside down. We had a couple of financial things, and our town employees took a hit, a zero increase, no pay raise. We got ourselves right. And that reserve fund, just as your own personal reserve funds, you're putting money away for a rainy day because you're trying to see when are we going to need that new roof on the back porch? When are we going to have to get a new car and we don't want to pay top dollar for interest on it? When are we going to have to get a new truck? So we started looking at those issues, and that's what a reserve fund is for. All right, and so between Barb, who preceded Rich, and Rich coming on, we started to get tremendous success with having some monies put aside. I want to get out of the rent business, right? We got rid of the courts. We were renting from that courts for almost 20 years. We now own it, and now there's a positive cash flow coming out on that because we have a renter in that building who's actually paying us a portion every month to help offset some of the costs on that. And it's not common knowledge, but it's one of the things that we've been very successful in able to do. Ultimately, I hope I live long enough that we're not paying rent for rec. I mean, I'm not going to. I have no concept of what we could possibly do down the road or where it's going to be, but I would love not to pay rent on things like that. But I think we're in a problem with our assessed valuations in the town. I accept the appraisal and the conditions of that appraisal that came in, that had it appraised at eight something, because I frankly think it's worth that much on 96. And I think the fact that what it does for us as far as contiguous properties there, the gentleman who just left asked a great question about Brace Road, and obviously that's not going to work for the highway, but if it dead ends at the village sewage treatment plant, and they come in the back out to Anthony Drive at Auction Direct, and there's a light, now it's safe. But those things can't be discussed, one, until we own the property, until we start to get a plan. And, those things have been discussed, but they can't be formalized or finalized. So I think, to me, I think that as an elected official, as one of 5 who have a vote and relying on our experts through engineering, through finance, through, assessing, I think that's there's 5 of us making decisions on how to proceed along those lines. So, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're elected, is to make those decisions and to make sure that we're doing them soundly. I don't disagree with anyone who's trying to get a permissive referendum, but for me personally, that's involvement, that's public participation. But I'd rather see people here on a more regular basis. It would make Dave more comfortable, it would make us more comfortable if we had more people here on a regular basis to bring up some of these issues and to talk about things, and maybe that would help enlighten people as we move along. And the last thing I'm going to say is, as far as the assessments are concerned, anybody who understands tax rates and equalization rates knows that Victor is not in a good spot right now as far as our assessment. Why? Because we are at an equalization rate of about 76%, which means that at a bare minimum, every parcel in this town immediately would have to be assessed at 25 to 30% higher than what it's assessed at right now. That's just a bare minimum. And that's not even taking into account, folks that are trying to buy houses who, right now, you guys know, if you have family or friends that are trying to buy houses, they're buying them above assessed valuation, they're paying cash, they're going with no inspection, and they're losing out, and I don't have to tell you anything you don't know. We're lucky in that regard. But when we do a full value assessment, there's going to be a lot of sticker shock, I'm afraid, to a lot of our residents. And I think that, that's part of the issue too. But those are my comments, and I agree with Councilman Guinan. I thought Randy's comments were not about the topic. I thought they were simply a personal attack on Supervisor Marin, and I didn't appreciate that. But anyway.
Okay. Councilman Condon, as always, thanks for your comments. Councilman Cusimano, I don't want to...
I think it's, for the most part, been said. I think, 4 years ago, when Mark took me on a tour of the highway facility on my first day after getting elected, I looked at facilities over on Rawson Road, and, I'm not an engineer, I'm not in the construction industry, but, through my line of work, and I look at, the building, and I can get a pretty good sense of where we're at with it. And, it didn't take more than 2 or 3 minutes kind of walking through the building, go, wow, this is old. And, we have that original bowstring structure that sits along the front of the Rawson Road, and then there's been multiple additions that are disconnected. And I think that when you look at the infrastructure and the buildings themselves, I think we're putting ourselves in a huge place of risk and liability for injury, for fire, for some type of a catastrophic event that, we lose a ton of equipment, which, from my perspective, is unacceptable, and the risk there far outweighs the risk of what I feel is a little bit expensive for this piece of property. So, from my voting position, the piece of property that we're currently looking at on Brace Road was my third option that I wanted. I thought maybe we could use the property that the facilities are currently on. Then I had hoped to use the property on Dryer Road that we currently own. and that both of those first two options would eliminate the need to purchase land. It was absolutely stated through the analysis by LaBelle, and they put the maps and showed us what a facility, a 50-year style facility for a highway department would look like, and they turned the buildings each way, they made it into different shapes, and the current land that we own on Rawson Road just will not suffice for the building of the future, and we would be shortchanging ourselves by putting it there. Then we looked at Dryer Road, that was my first pick, and we realized that the upgrades to infrastructure to get the water and the sewer and the sewer run to that piece of property was going to exceed just working with the land that we're currently speaking about now. We looked at several other pieces of property. I don't know what the range of the price would have been. I know that it would be, the one that we looked at after this one would have probably been quite a bit more expensive and would have required a tremendous amount of earthwork that would have really exponentially increased the price to actually develop that land. The land that we've looked at on Brace Road is a suitable location that will fit the need for a facility like this. And I think speaking from 4 years now with the town, this is a project that really needs to be underway now. And I think that we're running a big risk by not really actively pursuing this. And I think that as we begin to, talk price with the land and should we do this, should we not do this, I think that we're running a big risk by not doing it, because then having looked at what those second, third, fourth, fifth options would look like around town right now, I think we just set ourselves back a couple of more years in trying to work through this. So do I think that the price on that property is something that excites me? It far from excites me. I think it's a difficult purchase to absorb for me. I think it's the necessary and appropriate purchase. And that, that's coming from, someone who's really taken a very active role in learning the information, looking at the other properties, because I do feel it's a tremendous expense, and this is the first step of a big project, and certainly acquiring the land is essential to doing that. So I think that's where I stand, and I certainly support this.
Thank you for your comments, and not to exclude Councilwoman Ogra.
Absolutely. I know there were some comments regarding the tax rate and reserve funds, and I just wanted to mention that last year the tax rate for this budget went up 0%. I know there were also some comments about assessed value. I can tell you from my own personal experience as of purchasing a home in 2022 in the great town of Victor, I'm quite happy that my assessed value is, even with the equalization rate, much lower than the appraised value and much lower than the purchase point that I paid for it. So I don't think that, citing maybe the assessed value of the property is necessarily a fair determination of what the actual property is worth, nor is the fair market value of the property, because it's not the fair market value of the actual property. We've had the property appraised just like any of us would have our home appraised or possible homes appraised when we're going to purchase one or sell one. And it's much higher than what our county determines as the assessed value and the fair market value. In regards to some comments made about maybe transparency, I think, as always, the board meetings are open to everyone. I can tell you that on December 18th, I was sitting in the audience of this meeting. I was not a town board member at the time. So they're always open to everyone. Should anyone have any questions, we're always a phone call away, an email away. We're all happy you're here tonight to make your voices heard. Come anytime. Like Drew said, after he was elected, going over the town highway garage, I just recently did that myself in the last few weeks. And I can tell you that, and I know Councilman Kuzeman also spoke about facilities, government facilities that he's seen through his day job. I can tell you through government facilities I've seen in my day job, going from different towns to different towns, that I've seen a lot nicer highway garages in much smaller towns, but both population-wise and tax base-wise. So we are working very well within not a lot to work with over there. And I think it's definitely time that we do see a new highway facility to make sure that the roads that we're all driving on every day are still the best I'd say the best in our area. I make a 35-minute commute every day, so I drive through a lot of different towns. I can tell you that out of all the towns I drive through, Victor's got the best roads, and I'm not just saying that because Mark's sitting right over there. And then as well, talking about utilities, when you look at Victor and you drive around, you might think, and I, myself have often thought, there's a lot of land here. Even though we've grown so much, there's still so much land. Why can't you purchase another piece of land? I've kind of thought of that, my question myself. But when you get into it, there isn't a lot of land. A lot of our developments right now have conservation easements, meaning that the homes are there, however, the land behind it, surrounding it, can't actually be developed ever. A lot of our properties don't have proper government utilities. So we don't have sewer at some sites. We don't have water at some different plots of land. This piece of land would be able to have access to both of those. And so I think just when we're looking at everything, the amount that we're paying for it, I don't see land getting cheaper in Victor, which, if you're looking to sell your home is great. If you're looking to buy one here, not so great. But I don't see land here getting ever any cheaper for $1 million. I think the value we're getting out of the land is quite high. I can tell you when we're comparing ourselves to other towns, and other towns making purchases of land, can get very expensive. As soon as any sort of landowner sees sometimes what the project might be wanting to do, which is why this was done in executive session, a lot of discussions, the price would get raised. So I think that we're in a great spot where we are now. And if anyone has any questions, I know we'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much for your comments. Just one point I wanted to clarify on. So we currently, as I stated, we currently own 25 acres on Brace Road. 16 of that was gifted to the town by a very generous family, the Paparone family, back in the early 2000s, I think around that time frame. So that land is designated as parkland. That's how the state sees it. So we really, as far as, could you build a highway facility there? We could appeal to the state and ask them to change it, but they don't hand those out freely. So that's kind of why, that at some point will be some type of, whether it's fields or whatever that may be. So at this time, we'll move to reports of town officials. You have the annual conservation report in your packet. Director of Finance report as well. And I do want to have a few items under Supervisor's verbal report. I did in your mailboxes a number of public safety reports. The Victor Fire Department, the Farmington Fire Department. There was also a update from the workforce development grants that were awarded to a couple of 3 town businesses. Victor Central School meeting minutes, because it was specific to safety, I thought it was important to share with you. A letter from the Ravenwood Management on some new management announcements. And then Evening of Great Taste at the Aquinas Group, which is a very generous organization that supports many great initiatives here in the town. They'll be having their Evening of Great Taste on February the 3rd. There was I copied you on a New York State DOT letter regarding High Street. You will know that we asked our clerk to, in the efforts of the highway superintendent as well, to petition the state of New York for a speed reduction from Lane Road up to the Victor line by Victor Central School, and also the consideration for a school zone. My understanding, I think the way I read the letter is they denied the speed reduction but the school zone will be in place. So I am going to notify the law enforcement agencies that we work with, the Sheriff's Department and State Police on that as well. And as well, I think Lane Road, there was no change in speed reduction recommended for that as well. And is that the way you read everything, Mark, as well? Okay. Thank you. I also want to mention that we have two longstanding employees set to retire at the end of this month. Terry Bolt, there'll be an open house for her at the courts on January 26th from 5 p.m. to 7:30. Terry's with us 35 years. And in addition, Kim Kinsella, there'll be a retirement gathering on her last day, January the 31st, from 1:30 to 3:30 here in the main reading room. I think Kim is 37 years with us. So two longstanding, very valued employees. I did share with the board recently the unfortunate news about Auction Direct, the warn notice back on December 20th, where they will be unfortunately laying off 57 employees and eventually closing. I do want to thank Councilman Cusimano for also providing me with information. You know, the old legacy that we have on High Street was sold, and a company called Watermark, they manage this facility. We did not receive a warn letter regarding layoffs and concerns that we may have, but that doesn't mean something can't take place in the future. But 7 other communities were issued warn letters that there's unfortunately, I think Watermark is struggling. I don't know if Councilman Cusimano, if you have anything else you want to add on that. I do appreciate you giving me that information.
Nope, that's all that I had, just in seeing that.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Board members, I know it's early. We'll start next week with liaison responsibilities, or actually maybe tomorrow night with planning board, I think. So, thank you. And if you have no other comments, we'll move to the resolutions here this evening. And number 1 is the agreement with Barn Door Events, community events donations. And this has been, I want to thank you for your past support. It's been a very, we've done extremely well. She's done well. Karen working with the Parks and Rec Director and Local Development Corporation as well.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Number 2, again, we've had, this is a recommendation from FEMA to have a new current memorandum of understanding regarding Boughton Park with our 2 partners, West and East Bloomfield. And again, this will help us through this process based on the very successful grant that we were given for Phase 1 of, I think it was $327,000, and then potentially $3.2 million, I think, on Phase 2 if we're successful. So, and it would be my understanding that East and West Bloomfield, I did recommend to both of them that they should also do a resolution. But okay, any comments or questions? Hearing none.
Second, Drew.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Number 3, setting the public hearing for 1086 Strong Road. And again, this is expanding the drainage improvement area through the town. This is a fairly new development that's underway as we speak.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And number 4, speak right into your microphone. Come on, don't be shy.
I'd like to introduce Emily Columbus to come up and just give a little brief overview of this next resolution, that the contract that we'd like to do for a records management grant.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, my name is Emily Columbus. I own a grant services firm called ESP Consulting. I opened a few years ago following about 25 years of government services. I work mainly with municipalities and nonprofit organizations. This grant, it's called the Local Government Records Management Improvement Fund Grant, and it's about as difficult of a grant to apply for as it is to say. And I don't go around recommending this grant a lot because it's a difficult grant to get. But it is, when you have a community that is dedicated to their records and is looking at long-term planning for their records management, which the town of Victor is looking at doing, it can be a really great access to funding. The reason I like this grant, and no two grants are the same, is that you're able to apply for up to, currently, and guidelines change annually, for $75,000 towards records management, depending on where the community starts and where it ends, and there isn't a match. Also, you're working with a regional representative from the New York State Department of Archives, New York State Archives, to kind of help you through that process, to make sure you're doing it in the right way, and you can apply for it year after year. And so the town had reached out to me in regards to this grant. We talked through it as far as eligibility. We had the regional representative come out, do a tour, and look at the records. And there are different categories within this grant, and it was recommended that we start at you start at the kind of the beginning, which is what's considered an inventory grant, and that allows a community to look at all the records, all the inventory of all the records across the entire community, to really get a snapshot of where it is and what the policies and procedures are. And the funding that you are really applying for each year, and it can be every year, is to begin that process and hire a consultant, someone who professionally comes in and looks at records and make sure that they're being organized as government policies change to the best of the ability, that the town across departments has consistent policies. So that is what this grant will begin working towards for the town, and I would be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
So I do, so on the cover letter, page 1 of the contract, so the agreement, this date, December 12th?
She gave me.
Okay, so,
So we have.
so board members scratch that, so it's January 8th, and then January 8th and April 15th. Okay, so then on page 2, under bullet point 7, term of contract, today's date through April the 15th of 2024. Okay,
Yes.
all I had was.
Yeah, we actually had started, Karen and I had been in discussions with this over the last couple months, actually, because this grant is a grant you want to prep for over a couple months to make sure that the community is ready to take on, the town is ready, that the staff is there. And I don't like to write grants that don't win. And so you want to make sure that everyone's in the best position for this grant, and that the agency you're working with, if they're able to, agrees, which they do agree, which is a great position to be in. So that was why the date was previously. We've been working on it a little bit because the grant is expected to come out. It has not come out yet. There was supposed to be a webinar last week that got postponed. But in the 6 weeks' time, usually is about the general time to write a grant from the time it comes out to the due date. It would be very difficult to put together a good application for this grant specifically. You want to be preparing, which is what the town has been doing. So that's why I had their earlier date.
Any other questions for Emily?
Do we need to change the date on the resolution?
Yeah, I did know, yeah, the resolution still has,
Correct.
Should be a
So on
resolution.
the grade point, Alexis, on the first resolve, so please change that to today's date, January the 8th through April the 15th.
and I moved that date out because usually this grant does come out about now, and there's usually about 6 weeks, and it hasn't come out yet, but it will, and this will be through the submission. But I extended that date just in case, so there's extra time.
Okay.
Is there a specific, so you mentioned it's a difficult grant typically. Is that because of the number of parameters that are required, or the makeup of the town and what we asset-wise we have already makes it difficult? Or what specific component makes this a difficult grant?
This grant, the answers to the questions that they are looking for are so very specific that it gets into if you're looking at a file and you're looking at a department, and you want to look at the records, they're going to ask you the department, they're going to ask you the records section, they're going to ask you how many files, the approximate number of pages in that file folder, if that sheet of paper is double-sided or single-sided, if every file within that folder is 8.5 by 11 or a regular sheet, whether it's held in a normal box, a long box, a rolled-up map, a flat map. So the details that can go into this, which align with the services that are provided, because to scan an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper is one thing, but to scan a map that's larger takes different equipment. So it's really the guidelines, which I would consider the grant guidance, to be difficult. The inventory grant, which we are applying to, is actually the least detail of all of it, because you're bringing someone in to kind of do an overall review. But what's great about this is you can bite it off in bite-sized pieces, and what I like to do is, very close to that $75,000 amount, so there's little to no additional fund spending. And it isn't something you don't want to rush, because records are so important, and you have the opportunity to work directly with a regional representative, which is great. But you'll find a lot of communities don't like to do this, because they either have to really take a strong look at exactly where they are with records management, and it's competitive, not necessarily the amount of applications, but the ones that are eligible.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions for Emily?
I'll make a motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, Emily.
Great, thank you.
Okay, public comment. Again, another opportunity for members of the public to address the town board.
Get to go again? Sure. Thank you. Cheryl Jones Richter, 125 Church Street. I'd like to say I appreciate all of the information provided by the board tonight. I wish it had been provided to the public, or even a week ago, before I spent 5 hours walking around. But I do appreciate the information. I have just one other question or point, I guess. I've taken a look at the site evaluation information, and it does state for the Brace Road site, there are wetlands on the site that would provide some challenges during the design of the site, but they could ultimately be avoided if the DEC does not take jurisdiction of them. So I guess one of the questions is, what is the potential risk of spending $1 million for property, and are there potential wetland risks that it could not be developed and used as planned? Typically, when you buy a house, you get a review done before you spend your money.
We had two things we had to do before. We had to do an environmental assessment, so we paid our engineering firm to do that on behalf of certainly the buyer. And then the other thing, to your point, was a sit-down with FEMA regarding the wetlands, because even the parcel that is could be transferred as far as right of first refusal, in the map, looks like it's an extreme wetland. And we know, just our own experience from government, that unfortunately, in those really torrential downpours, our village sewer treatment plant gets a lot of water down in that area, so it's a low area.
Okay.
So, but our parcel, if you turn on Brace and you make that little turn right around and you're going to head, towards the Serenity House or Victor Municipal Park, that area right there is still wet, and it's periodically wet. We see it wet, but it's within the FEMA map. And we, through our, and again, as the gentleman asked me, did we take a look at and do any site plan? We did have it mapped out, see where our huge potential garage would fit, and that area was.
Not going to be near that.
No, not whatsoever. If anything, maybe it's a retention pond type of scenario there.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, if you do look at it, and then you look in front of the old, whatever, it was a Jeep store there, across, and from DeFelice across, and then it comes out, you can see the cattails and where it comes, and it's basically part of the stormwater management. It flows pretty good through there, so we would have to enact some sort of I don't want to call it remediation, but there would be something we would have to do to make that site doable no matter what. But any site that you have also has a green area that you have to set aside anyways, like any other thing would be, and that would be part of it. And it would probably be, I'm guessing, strictly a guess, because you can't do any engineering unless you own it, but would be a function, the engineers would come up with a plan that we would take the square footage we want and put it on the lot and encompass wetlands and all that stuff in one plan. But it's doable, but we know it's there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comment?
Hi, Dave Nankin from Chaucer Court. The garage where it is right now, is that in the village?
It is in the village, yes.
So we don't own the land then on that?
Oh, no, we own that, I think it's 60 Rawson Road? Yeah, we
Yeah, we
own
own
that
that.
entire footprint, where the recycling center is.
Okay.
And then the parks maintenance building is in the back.
And, let's say everything works out in 4 years, we have a new garage and such. Would you have plans for that parcel yet? Or would you think about perhaps selling it and defray the cost of, you know?
Unfortunately, because Councilman Guinan mentioned it, because we've been talking about this for so many years, my first conversation was in 2011, and it had to do with the, we will call it the Hartman Building, which is on School Street, which is now a gymnastics place. That was a location we had identified back in 2011. We had negotiations in 2013. And then, Steve, you'll recall when we sat down with the DEC and Army Corps of Engineers, because we wanted to build a road from the School Street site, because our highway superintendent, again, taking his opinion, he said, Jack, we're not turning on School Street with these big, large plows. We need to connect through our existing footprint on 60 Rawson Road. So it made sense. Build a road through there. Army Corps, and there is some wetland area back there. Again, unfortunately, you look at the land that's available, much of it is unfortunately with wetlands throughout the town. So Army Corps and DEC said, we'll allow you to build a bridge to that location. Well, after that, there was no sense in doing that. But that's part of the problem we have with 60 Rawson Road. There's not a lot of room. Again, if we were to either refurbish or remove the Parks Maintenance Building, we have to build a Parks Maintenance Building somewhere on another piece of property and use that space for additional highway. But some of the buildings they have 1955, 60, in that range, so
Early 50s.
it's
So
tired.
we hold on to it.
Yeah. So as far as plans, because we've been at this so long, we even considered building our own standalone courts building there. And then we had tried on 2 different owners to try to acquire the courts facility. And finally, this recent owner seemed interested. And then at that time, there was you recall, there's still a knitting business there. The previous owner of that, we had an opportunity to speak to her. And she indicated she was going to sell, and so she was able to secure a 5-year lease on that, and I think it was Councilman Condon mentioned that we are now receiving revenue off of that. And for us to buy that building without a tenant, under state law, we cannot go out and advertise for a tenant. So buying a piece of property that has a current tenant with a lease, it's a windfall for the town. So as far as any additional, no courts are going to be there, but certainly we look at recycling. I know Casey is just trying to grow that program with composting and things of that
Very
nature.
good, yeah.
And we could use some additional space over there that would probably be earmarked for the Parks Maintenance Building. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other members of the public?
Christopher Blair, 1223 Wellington Drive again. I guess when you were talking about Dryer Road, when you brought that up, and you were talking about running sewers, is there any benefit to the public for that? For homeowners on Dryer Road or in that area that might be on septic that could tie into those sewers? Is that an option?
We didn't go that far as just thinking, we looked at that first price tag and we said, boy, if we're sharing that with others, it could be a steep, so we did not, to answer your question.
I mean, I'm just saying that could be an option. It could be a benefit to the taxpayers as well.
Correct.
I'm sure that they might want to be tied into a sewer instead of having their own septic systems that they have to deal with.
We're looking at, Mr. Years, they continue to extract materials out of there, not as much as they used to years ago. So, we'll continue to use it, and he refers to it as spoils and other things. He talks that language, I can't. So.
Yep. And then also, has it been discussed, the cost of the new buildings that you're planning on building at these locations? Is there any type of budget or anything? Obviously, $1 million for a piece of project is just drop in the bucket when you start putting these buildings and everything else on it, so.
Again, that's part of this, taking our highway superintendent around. I want him to hear firsthand from other highway superintendents what they did for in-kind services, because earthwork, we have a talented group over there of highway employees, and we're hoping that they can do a lot of that earthwork for us to certainly reduce costs. And again, it'll depend on how many pieces of equipment, Mark's forecasting, what he has today, what he potentially need, or his replacement, or the future highway superintendent would need as well. So no price point at this point. I've had some numbers thrown out years ago when we were refurbishing 7200 Rawson. We looked at that building and that land adjacent to that, and they were eye-opening, for sure.
Okay, and then any contingency plans? If we purchase this property and something falls through, DEC comes through with the wetlands and says,
Yeah.
you can't do anything on this, what's the
I'm just-
contingency plan at that point?
I'm just I'm just hoping that the DC doesn't come through, and, right now, if you really took a aerial map of 60 Rawson Road, certainly we're infringing on wetlands today and have been for a number of years. Worst-case scenario would be invest money in that building that we currently own right now, which is, in my opinion, it's not a good fit, so.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Okay?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your questions. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Susie, anyone on the public? Nope. Okay. Board members, at this time, entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.